we go. Okay. It says is this on?
They're on, but it's volume
Okay.
probably.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Meridian Planning and Zoning Commission on August 16th, 2018. And we'll begin with roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Holland,
Here.
Commissioner McCarville,
Here.
Commissioner Perot,
Here.
Commissioner Casanelli,
Here.
and absent are Commissioners Yearsley, Wilson, and Fitzgerald.
Okay. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. There have been no changes, so could I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we have one item on the consent agenda, and that is to approve minutes for the August 2nd, 2018 Planning and Zoning meeting. Could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So at this time, I'd like to briefly explain the public hearing process for this evening. We'll open each item individually and then start with the staff report. The staff will report their findings regarding how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and uniform development code with the staff's recommendations. After the staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case for approval of their application and respond to any staff comments. The applicant will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant has finished, we will open to public testimony. There is a sign-up sheet in the back as you entered for anyone wishing to testify. Any person testifying will come forward and be allowed 3 minutes. If they are speaking for a larger group like an HOA and there's a show of hands to represent that group, they will be given up to 10 minutes. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to have the opportunity to come back and respond if they desire. After that, we will close the public hearing, and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make a recommendation to City Council. So at this time, I'd like the record to reflect that Commissioner Yearsley is present.
Sorry for being late, Madam Chair.
We'll let it slide just this once. So at this time, we'd like to open the public hearing for item H-2018-0076, Belleville Subdivision, and we'll begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chair, excuse me, members of the commission. The first application before you tonight is a request for a rezone and a short plat. This site consists of 1.49 acres of land. It's zoned LO, located at 385 South Locust Grove Road. Adjacent land use and zoning to the north is rural residential property zoned R1 in Ada County. To the east is Locust Grove Road and single-family residential property zoned R15. To the south is vacant and developed commercial property zoned CG, and to the west is industrial property zoned IL. This property was annexed back in 1999 with the requirement of a development agreement, which has been modified since that time. A daycare center currently operates in the existing building at the west end of this site. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is mixed use community. A rezone of 1.49 acres of land from the LO to the CC zoning district is proposed, consistent with the mixed use community future land use designation. A conceptual development plan was submitted as shown that depicts how the site is proposed to develop with 2 commercial buildings, associated parking areas, and driveway access via South Locust Grove Road. Conceptual elevations were also submitted for the future buildings on the site. A short plat is proposed consisting of 2 building lots on 1.33 acres of land in the proposed CC zoning district. There is one existing structure on the west portion of this site that I mentioned that's the daycare right now that will be retained until redevelopment occurs at some point in the future. The concept plan demonstrates how the site may redevelop upon removal of that structure. One driveway access exists to the site via South Locust Grove Road, which is proposed to remain and provide access to both of the proposed lots. Because local street access is not available, the UDC requires the property owner to grant cross-access, ingress-egress easements to adjoining properties. Therefore, staff is recommending a cross-access easement and driveway stubs are provided to the property to the north and to the south. A 25-foot wide landscape street buffer and sidewalk exists along Locust Grove in accord with UDC standards. A modification to the existing development agreement is proposed to update the uses allowed on the property from those allowed in the LO district to those allowed in the CC district, consistent with the proposed rezone request. Staff is recommending new provisions are included in the agreement that require future development of the site to substantially comply with the conceptual development plan and building elevations associated with this application and the design standards listed in the Architectural Standards Manual. The Commission is not recommending a body on that application. That's just for information purposes for you. Written testimony has been received from Kent Brown, the applicant's representative, and they are in agreement with the staff report. Staff is recommending approval with the conditions in the report. Staff will take for questions.
Any questions for staff? Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward?
For the record, Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood, Meridian, Idaho. And I think Sonia has covered everything, unless you have a specific question that you would like me or the applicant to answer. I don't know what else to really tell you. We're looking to have a flex space buildings. He has a construction business, and he would like to have his office there and have clients come to meet them and talk about building a house. The back part, like most flex space buildings, has a garage door, but that's not what you would see from the street. Other than that, I don't know what else I could really tell you about the landscape berms in. Most of the improvements have already been installed, other than what would be the asphalt around the building and parking stalls and so forth that would be there. But in the previous applications, the berm was put in. We need to put in a fire hydrant, and we need to put in a street light, and we're more than willing to do that and have understood that. So,
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Chris, did we have anybody sign in for public testimony?
Madam Chair, no one has signed in.
Okay. That being said, is there anybody in the room at this time that would like to testify in this application? Okay, come forward. As you approach the mic, just give your name and address for the record.
Robert R. Smith, 335 South Locust Grove Road. I own the property that adjoins this on this. It would be his north boundary and my south boundary.
Okay.
I've lived there since 1966. He has not been a very good resident for me. Every year I've got to call him to get the weeds, call the code enforcer to have the weeds removed. And he's developed his property. May I come forward, please?
Sure.
To where all of his wastewater.
Don't speak until you get back to the mic, because he can't get it on the record. We can pass him from here.
They're saying you better watch all of them.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All of his wastewater runs off his property onto me. It has run into my shop in those pictures right there. I consulted with him. He ignored the situation and has not done a thing to it since. I would like to have a berm on that property line of his, plus a 4-foot fence down our property, so we'd be screened from him.
Okay. Okay.
So
Thank you.
if we could make that a statement to where it would be enforced, I'd really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. According to the Meridian code enforcer, Meridian has no ruling on runoff water of an adjacent property to anyone. So I couldn't even get any help from Meridian when this all happened.
Okay.
The county, at the time they widened Locust Grove Road, has a drain for our irrigation that runs on his property, and they left him a bib for that. I told him about it when he hauled all that fill in there to where he ought to leave that open to where he could get his water runoff into that drain ditch, but nothing's happened.
Okay,
That's been quite a while ago.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this application tonight? Okay, would the applicant like to come forward?
We have a
Name
landscape.
and address for the record,
Oh.
sorry, Ken.
3161 East Springwood, Kent Brown. We have, if you look at the site plan, we have a large green space that is along that northerly boundary, separating the two of us. We also have a sidewalk that goes along there. I understand that runoff, it took place during the huge snow that we had, and yes, some water did go down onto his property at that time. He's had issues with the weeds. This makes us, I mean, we're putting in lawn and asphalt and making all of that area that he's concerned about, and generally code enforcement's come out and haven't asked my client to do anything because he's already in the process of doing it. And it's kind of like I'm in charge of the berm on our neighborhood, and we've got some goat heads next to our pump house, and the maintenance guy notifies me, and you know, you're out there trying to take care of it, but weeds are weeds, and it just keeps coming back. But this will help, I think, mitigate the situation between the two neighbors.
So your landscape shows all water running towards,
We are required
current property.
with any of the applications to keep any water on our site, and we will do that.
any other questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, what about the
fence?
fencing?
Yeah, is it amenable for a fence, or? Okay. Please, you have to come to the microphone, sorry.
We're planning on fencing that northerly boundary.
Okay. And what kind of fence is that going to be?
It will either be 6-foot dog-eared cedar or vinyl.
Yeah, state your name and address for the record, sorry.
Brent Belleville, 745 North Ralston Street, Meridian.
Okay,
It'll either be 6-foot dog-eared cedar or 6-foot vinyl
okay,
down that north property line.
Okay.
Front to back.
thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, could I get a motion to close the public hearing for item H-2018-0076?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H-2018-0076. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. I think this is going to be a nice addition to what's right now bare ground, and clean that space up nicely.
Madam Chair?
Be in favor of it. Commissioner?
Question for staff. What was feedback, if any, from ACHD having that access to Locust Grove so close to Water Tower?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Casanelli, the existing driveway, it's there. It's already. They didn't make any changes to it.
Okay, even with requiring access through the neighboring developments, they don't want to eventually see that closed off? They didn't have a concern on that?
I'm not sure I understand
It-
cross-access, or?
There's the cross-access that's going to be going into the south, is that correct?
South and north.
That's
south end.
what's in the recommendation now, yes.
Okay. And to the north eventually?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay. With those accesses, what I'm asking is ACHD, once those go through, are they're not requiring the closure of the driveway to Locust Grove? That'll remain there?
That'll remain,
permanently?
yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. And they don't have an issue with that?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'll just make the comment, that would be, I like the project. They're, you know, looking to landscape it and fence it from the neighbor to the north. If ACHD doesn't have a, that would be my only concern, is that access and the proximity to water tower, but I'll defer to ACHD, and if they don't have an issue with that, I think I'm good with it.
Any other thoughts? No other discussion? Would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli.
after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the City Council of file number H-2018-0076 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of August 16th, 2018, with staff's recommendation.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to recommend approval on file H-2018-0076. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, may I just clarify the motion,
Sure.
please? Was there any changes to the staff recommendation?
No, I don't
No.
believe so. He said with staff recommendations.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to open the public hearing for item H-2018-0071, Verrazzo Village North. And we'll begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The next application is a conditional use permit. This site consists of 1.7 acres of land, zone CG, located at 3471, 3513, 3543, and 3561 East Tecate Lane. Adjacent land use and zoning to the north is commercial property, Culver's Restaurant and Les Schwab Tires, zone CG. To the south is multifamily, previous phases of Verrazzo Village, zone CG. To the east is Records Avenue and a church, zone R8. And to the west is developed commercial property, zone CG. This property was annexed back in 2005 and included in the Una Mas subdivision. A development agreement was required as a provision of annexation, which has been subsequently modified. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is mixed-use regional. A conditional use permit is requested for a multifamily development consisting of 64 dwelling units on 1.7 acres of land in the CG zoning district. The number of units has been reduced from the original application submittal from 68 to 64. This is the fourth phase of Verrazzo Village multifamily development. It differs from previous phases in that all of the units will be located within one structure rather than 2 units in each structure. The development is proposed to consist of 14 one-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. The gross density for the development is 37.65 units per acre, consistent with that desired in the mixed-use regional designated areas. The applicant would like the flexibility to construct either a 3- or 4-story structure. The number of units would stay the same either way. The amount of common area would increase if a 4-story structure is built. Parking is located under the units on the ground floor, as shown on the site plan before you. Private usable open space, common area, and site amenities are provided in accord with UDC standards. An interior courtyard with fountains is proposed as shown on the second floor, and an open grassy area along the west boundary of the site, which also serves as an emergency access, is proposed similar to that in previous phases. A minimum of 121 parking spaces are required. 145 spaces are proposed for a total of 24 additional spaces beyond those required. A 20-foot wide landscape street buffer is required along Records Avenue. An attached sidewalk already exists along Records. Conceptual building elevations and a rendering were submitted as shown for the proposed structure. Building materials are proposed to consist of stucco, with either cement or wood siding and metal accents. The final design is required to comply with the design standards listed in the Architectural Standards Manual. Chad Olson, the applicant, submitted written testimony in agreement with the staff report, and staff is recommending approval with conditions. Staff will stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Would the applicant like to come forward? we not have?
I'm not sure where the applicant is.
Okay. Is there anyone here to testify on this application?
Madam Chair, nobody signed in.
Okay. Is there anybody in the room tonight that wishes to testify on this application? Okay. So I guess the applicant won't be coming back forward. No. So at this time, do we want to close and discuss on what we've got or continue it?
Madam Chair, my recommendation would be to continue, because I have questions and I'm not ready to move this forward
Right.
without
Okay.
answers.
All right.
I agree.
Can we have a motion then?
Do we,
We close the public hearing first?
No.
and-
No,
the
leave it
public
open.
hearing's still open.
Yeah,
Okay.
leave it open because we'll join it back at that point.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Yearsley.
I move to continue file number H 2017-0071 to the hearing date of September 6th, 2018. For the applicant, it wasn't because the applicant was not here to answer questions from the Planning Commission.
I second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded to continue H-2018-0071. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on. We'll open the public hearing for H-2018-0077, and we'll begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Next item on the agenda is the Zions Bank drive-through. I am filling in for Josh this week. Just to let you know, the applicant is here this evening to discuss with you a conditional use permit for a drive-through use. So I want to make it clear on the record that the bank is a financial institution in our code. That's a principally permitted use, and the only reason why they're here before you this evening is to allow the associated drive-through use because it's within 300 feet of a existing residence and another drive-through that's proposed and approved to be constructed on this site. Subject property is approximately 1 acre of land and is currently zoned CC. To the north, we have a public street, Island Green Drive, and residential properties in the county. East is vacant commercial property, which has been approved by the department, the planning division, for a vehicle car wash facilities, which is this L-shaped piece here. To the south, we have West Chinnen Boulevard and commercial property in Night Hill Center, zone CG. And then the west, we have Einstein's Oilery that abuts this particular property. In 2014, this property did come before the commission and ultimately got approved by council to rezone it with the CC zoning district. The project was called Chinden and Linder Crossing, and it was approved to have a 9-lot commercial subdivision on the site. As part of that approval, the City Council did approve a development agreement modification, which also runs with the particular parcel and the subject site. The applications and the elevations that are before you this evening are found to be consistent with that recorded development agreement. So here is the site plan that the applicant has shared with you, and it's part of the staff report. I would mention that all of the site plan and the landscape plan that's before you this evening is in compliance with UDC standards, not only for driveway widths, but also the specific use standards for drive-throughs. The only exception to being compliant with code is the requirement for the landscape buffer along the west boundary of this site. So what had happened was when Einstein Oilery went in, they actually constructed a 6-foot wide landscape buffer along that boundary. A portion of it falls on their property and a portion of it falls on this property. Well, after we wrote the staff report and had a condition of approval in the staff report, the applicant brought that to our attention. And so they have asked us to modify that condition in the staff report, and that would be condition 4.A, or 4A, excuse me. And how it currently reads, it's requiring that they rip out the curbing and construct a 5-foot wide landscape buffer in accordance with UDC standards. After staff had a chance to evaluate the proposal, we feel that the applicant can go through that alternative compliance process with staff. It's staff level approval, and we can allow that buffer to remain as is with the addition of additional plantings. And I think the applicant's going to share what their proposal will be as far as an alternative to allow that buffer to remain as is. So if the commission so desires, I would ask we do modify that condition as you take deliberation on this particular application. So again, here's the landscape buffer, or the landscape plan that was submitted. Again, everything's in a compliance except for, again, if you can see my cursor here, this west boundary. Sample elevations were provided on this particular application, so we're looking at brick veneer, concrete lintels, glazing, sheet metal paneling on the roofing. So a mix of materials. Keep in mind the applicant still has to come back to staff and get approval of their final design, but in general, staff is supportive of the proposed elevations as you see this evening. Staff did not receive any written testimony on the subject application, and again, we are recommending approval with conditions, and if it's your desire, we ask that you modify condition 4A, and as you deliberate, I can share with you how we want that to read. Staff will stand for any questions you have.
Any questions for staff?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley.
Bill, can you go back to the site plan? Are they providing an escape lane? Are they doing 3 bays for, how's that configuration working?
Very good question, Commissioner Yearsley. Yes, the escape lane is the outer drive aisle here. So if stacking occurs here, then someone can get by and get out of the drive-through per UDC standards.
Any other questions for staff?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli.
Bill, can you reiterate on that landscape buffer between the proposal and the Einstein's Oil? What is it supposed to be again, and it's 5 feet now? What is it? What are the requirements?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Commissioner Casanelli, the current code requires a minimum 10-foot wide buffer, 5 on each property. With whichever development occurs first, that developer or that person that constructs bears the burden of putting in the trees. We don't tag the other property owner with the trees because we don't want to have so many trees in that planter island that they won't grow or mature. Again, in this particular case, a 3-foot buffer was constructed with Einstein's, and then they built the other 3 on this property. But the buffer width is actually 5 feet, so it's going to be 5 feet deficient from what city code requires now. But again, we have the ability through alternative compliance to allow that to remain as it's constructed if the applicant adds additional planters or does something equal to or better than what code requires. In these particular instances, in my experience with it, we typically get more plantings than what code requires, and that seems to offset or mitigate some of those concerns that staff has. The other thing is it's a good buffer between the different competing uses on the property, and so we believe 5 feet is adequate separation between these 2 uses.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Matt Huffield with Cole Architects, address, Matt Huffield, Cole Architects.
You can just pull that mic just a little closer to you.
Address 1008 West Main Street, Boise, Idaho.
Thank you.
The proposed project, I think there was a little confusion in the width. I think the total width is currently 6 feet, and it's supposed to be 10 feet. Mm-hmm. So we're 2 feet short, not 5 feet short on our side.
Okay.
And we will be adding additional landscaping per the requirement as requested. Overall, the project, I think it's a CC zone. It's an approved use in the zone. It's filling in a development that's already there. I think there's also a Carl's Jr. going in next 2 lots down that's already been approved. There's a car wash right next to us. And so I think it's a valid use in that zone. We've designed the building and the drive-through such that it works well with the property and the street frontage. We push it as far away from the residential area as possible, so it is buffered from that. There is significant landscaping in that area and parking as well, so it is protecting the residents' area as best we can.
Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Yearsley?
and you are in agreement with the staff report besides that one condition?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casnelli?
Where's the what's the road there? Where's the access to West Island Green Drive? And Bill, if you can show us where's the access to the proposed?
It's right
To
where
the
that little
drive-through.
flag's at. We actually come across the.
So you come in front of
front of-
Einstein's?
yes,
And then come over?
it's a sh-
Okay.
it's a shared
It's a
access
shared
between the
access
two,
there?
correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone signed up for public testimony on this?
Madam Chair, we had one person sign in, Andrew Lawrence.
And please state your name and address for the record.
Andrew Lawrence, 1685 West Brant Lane, Meridian.
Okay.
My only real question that I have is, where are the entrances to the drive-through and the exit? I would think that'd be a real important thing to bring up, and it hasn't been brought up, and I can't tell from this picture.
Bill, could you go back to that picture? Or, there we go. Can you see the arrows where it comes in?
Or can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
The arrow on the mouse. So basically, they share access with.
Okay, entrance and exit is north to
That's
south?
the entrance. Yes, correct.
Okay. And that is for the drive?
For the drive-through, yeah.
Actually, it goes around.
Yep. It would come in from the west,
And exit
south.
north?
Yep. And then come back through and then head back out.
Is there any type of a berm to protect the residents? The reason I ask that is Idaho Central has a beautiful berm. We used to see headlights until the berm filled in, or I should say the trees, and it's not a problem anymore. But it comes right in our house before it grew out. I don't want that to be a problem with this. And that is from the original picture of where it is structured on the lot. I am to the east and north. I am right at the entrance where they come off of Linder and pull into that lot. Oh, there we go. I'm right on the corner there, and
On that
yes,
cul-de-sac or the, close to Brant Lane?
Pardon me?
On the entrance at Linder and Brant or in the cul-de-sac?
Both of them. The entrance to Brant Lane and to the commercial lot where this is at. That
So
street
you're
is
the
called
lot-
West Island Green. But my concern, I'm a little protected there, so I shouldn't be whining about it. But we have two other residents, possibly three, that will be victims of this.
Yeah, I think the drive-through itself is clear on the other end of the lot.
Yeah, it's where you
is-
can see the C there on the edge. That's my understanding is where the exit is, and it's aimed right at the, between the B and the W on West Brant Lane on this map.
That's on the other side of that.
No, but
Bill, can you-
I'm using that as a reference point. But it just, it concerns me, and I felt that it should have been dealt with, and perhaps we can get the people up here to explain it a little further.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think,
not that difficult to put a wall, a 4 or 5 foot wall up and around an abutment to protect people, but if that's the exit, that is going to be a problem.
and
that's
Bill,
all-
can you elaborate again on what the landscape is on that end there, up against Island?
You can.
Sure, yeah, we'll have the applicant address it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Matt
Madam
Huffield,
Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Do we ask if anybody else wanted to
Oh,
testify?
I'm sorry. Was there anybody else in the room that wished to testify on this application? Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Yes. Matt Huffield, 1008 West Main Street, Boise, Idaho. Could you pull up the landscape plan? So I think there's a couple things going on here that may not be relevant just from a plan. Is in the northeast corner, if a vehicle's coming out there, first of all, there's a trash enclosure there that is a 6-foot high wall, CMU brick wall, that will block most of the light. There's also a row of hedges across there that will block the remainder of it. So I think from a light standpoint, pollution standpoint from vehicles, I think it's minimal. And I think that the landscaping along the street is already in place, but that may not be the case.
But the landscaping you're putting in along that area is how much is?
I think there are probably 3 or 4 foot row of hedges, so it should be enough to block vehicular lighting. Yeah.
Light.
And then again, the corner that he's concerned about, there's the trash enclosure there that will block it 100%.
It's 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Perot.
So will you have an ATM drive-through there? People might be coming through there after business hours.
Correct. There is an ATM
Okay.
drive-through.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, could I get a motion to close the public hearing for H-2018-0077?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for H-2018-0077. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I think this is a great fill-in project, and it's here before us because it's within 300 feet of another drive-through, and I think they've addressed keeping traffic away from that drive-through, and I think it flows nicely through there, along with, I think it's sufficient mitigation with the fence and the landscaping there for headlights. Could maybe request a few taller bushes, I don't know.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley.
Bill, will you pull up the landscaping plan? So I think the architect has actually done a very decent job. One of the concerns was the ATM. If you look, the ATM typically sits, I think, in front of the building there, and they've got a tree right in front of where, so hopefully it would block a lot of that. And so, and where they've got enough other shrubs and trees and stuff to the north, I think with that, it should mitigate a lot of the concerns. I would recommend if the gentleman who testified, if he has some more questions, to get with the architect afterwards and to kind of discuss those options and make that. But I think this for the drive-through, I think it's actually a fairly good location, and they've done a fairly good job trying to mitigate any of those. So.
Any other comments, or are we ready for a motion?
Madam Chair, I would say I tend to agree. I think they've done a good job of putting enough landscape buffers, and especially with that trash enclosure that's 6 feet tall, I think that will help with some of the light pollution coming through there. I'm ready to try and make a motion if everyone else is ready to go.
Sure.
Then, Bill, was there you supposed to bring up, excuse me, Madam Chair, to bring up what we wanted to say for that item 4A?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the way it's written now, it just says the applicant shall construct a 5-foot wide landscape buffer along the west boundary in accords with UDC standards. So if it's your desire for them to keep it the way it's constructed now, but add additional plantings, then we can just modify that to say that they need to seek alternative compliance to deviate from the 5-foot requirement, and then we can take care of it on our end to make sure that when they come in with their certificate of zoning compliance and design review, that we'll get that addressed appropriately and make it match up with what's currently constructed.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I actually like the smaller buffer right there between the two uses. I think it serves its purpose to have some landscaping there, but not to overwhelm the site. So I would be in favor of that option.
Mr. Holland.
Madam Chair, after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H-2018-0077 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of August 16th, 2018, with the following modification: that we modify condition of approval 4A to allow the applicant to submit an alternative compliance for the landscape buffer to deviate from the 5-foot requirement, and work with staff on that.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to recommend approval on H-2018-0077 with modification of 4A. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we'll open the public hearing for item H-2018-0074, White Cliff Estates subdivision. And we'll begin with the staff report.
Madam Chair.
Oh.
Before we do that, I just want to reiterate from my email earlier that I live within the 300-foot radius of this project, so I'd like to stay up here and see the presentation, but I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay. Everybody good with that?
As long as everybody's okay. I think I can be fair, but based on the fact of just that I'm in the mail out and in the 300-foot radius, I think as far as everybody's concerned and whatnot, I think it looks.
Well, and I guess so you're not going to vote on it? Is that what it is?
That's correct.
So if that's the case, are they allowed to stay here?
Are we okay with enough?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
If you,
no,
I can step
don't
down
have a
too.
problem, but I know on projects that I've actually recused myself, they actually had me go outside to listen and not to be an influence.
But it was your project, right?
No, it wasn't my project.
Okay.
I just so that's why I just want to make sure legally wise,
Yeah, no, I
easily
think you're
acceptable
fine,
for
but-
him to stay there.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Because I'm happy to. I can
think
hop on down too.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Okay. And is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Madam Chair, you ready?
We'll begin with the staff report.
All right, let's begin. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Next item on the agenda is the White Cliff Estates subdivision. The applicant is here this evening to discuss annexation and a preliminary plat with you. The site consists of 40.6 acres of land currently zoned RUT in Ada County. It's located at 943 West McMillan Road on the south side of McMillan between Linder and Meridian Road. So it's not quite the mid-mile, but it's in maybe a quarter of a mile from east of Linder Road. There is no history on this particular property as it's currently zoned and annexed in the county. The current comprehensive plan designation for the particular subject property is medium-density residential and office. So in our analysis of the staff report, at least our comprehensive plan analysis, we've tried to justify for you why we don't feel an office component is pertinent to this particular application and why residential is more suitable for it. So you can see along the east boundary here, you see an office park. It's still pretty undeveloped at this point. There is only one office building in there. So because the comprehensive plan, that designation on the comprehensive plan is not parcel specific like a zoning designation is, staff feels that there is sufficient office in this particular area. So we have recommended at least support the applicant's request for this particular 40 acres to be entirely R4 residentially zoned property. So the applicant is here again to annex the property. They're proposing a preliminary plat that consists of 128 building lots and 10 common lots. They are requesting again the R4 zoning district. The subdivision is proposed to be phased or developed in 3 phases. Staff has a recommended provision in the development agreement that the park and the associated amenities come in with the first phase something for you to take under consideration this evening. And the minimum lot size in the R4 zoning district is 8,000 square feet, and the plat before you complies with those standards. And then the gross density for the particular subdivision is 3.15 dwelling units to the acre. So it's just right at that cusp of 3 to 8 dwelling units to the acre and that medium density residential zoning designation. If you recall in the staff report, staff did recommend that the applicant bring forth quite a few changes before you this evening. The applicant has obliged most of staff's requests. The pedestrian connection has been included. The one lot that was substandard has been corrected to meet the minimum 8,000 square foot requirement. The easements have been referenced on the plat. The applicant has provided the pedestrian connection to the west, the Crossfield subdivision to the west, which is located mid-block between lots 5 and 6. And they've also addressed staff's concerns with the long block length. They've agreed to doing some kind of a raised crosswalk here to provide that traffic calming as suggested and requested by staff. Probably the biggest concern or criticism from the applicant is the requirement for losing access to McMillan Road. I would mention to Commission that's something that our code requires us to do as part of our review and application. Typically, we look at surrounding developments and see what kind of stub streets are provided to a particular property. In this case, you can see that there are 4 stub streets to this 40 acres. So in staff's opinion, this is viable, suitable access to this particular property, and another access to McMillan Road is not required. I would mention to you that we did reach out to ACHD to try to gain their support on closure of that access point, and they could not find any fault to deny the access, and they did approve the applicant's request to keep that access point to McMillan Road. So that's something the applicant certainly wants to discuss with you this evening. If you looked at the aerial, you would see there's an existing structure and some outbuildings on this particular property that will be removed with the first phase of development as well. So again, the only access to the arterial roadway is the McMillan Street access as proposed by the applicant, and then the 4 stub streets to the property will be extended with the subject property, the subject development. 25-foot wide landscape buffer is required along McMillan Road because it is an arterial roadway. You could see a lot of discussion in the staff report regarding what the ultimate look or how that's going to be landscaped in the future. As you can see, we called out in the staff report that there's a fairly large irrigation canal that runs in front of that, the Limp Canal, and then Idaho Power has some pretty significant power poles running through that, and they have a 60-foot wide easement. But as I mentioned to you in my opening statement, the applicant has addressed those. What they've shown does fit within the context of those easements. They have reached out to those entities, and they have communicated to her that what she's proposing is tentatively approved, so it can work with the way they're showing it to you this evening. The applicant will be required to widen out McMillan Road, so there is a question in our mind how the irrigation district will provide access to the Limp Canal. Currently, my discussions with the applicant, she has indicated that they are planning on taking access or maintenance of that canal on the north side of it and not on the south. So she said they were willing to work with her and enter into a license agreement and allow her to landscape all the way up to the south bank of the Limp Canal as part of her development. So staff's fairly confident that she can meet the 25-foot requirement. And we're not sure how it would look on the north side. Currently, the way the code's written is anytime we widen a road, if the road's not going to be widened immediately, then any surplus right-of-way has a 10-foot gravel shoulder and the rest is vegetated. So that when the roadway's widened, we want to make sure that ACHD puts back in landscaping as part of the development so we don't end up with gravel or unlandscaped sections of roadway throughout our city. In this particular case, McMillan Road will be constrained with that waterway. There is it's going to be a 3-lane roadway, center turn lane and two drive lanes. And so there's a good chance there won't be a lot of gravel between the bank ditch and the right-of-way. So I'm not sure if we have some conditions that the applicant has to provide that gravel shoulder and maintain landscaping in front of that canal, but I don't know if it's going to be warranted in this case. So there may be conditions we need to modify to make sure we get what we need from the applicant on that. As part For the request, the applicant is requesting that council grant or leave the Limp Canal open, so they do not want to tile that because it is a large facility. If memory serves me correctly, I believe the canal company went in and actually concrete lined that ditch so water wouldn't be seeping. So there's been quite a bit of maintenance, attention to detail on this particular canal. Again, the city council has the ability to waive these large facilities in this case. And if you've ever driven down that segment of roadway, you can see it's pretty much open all the way along that south side of the canal, or that south side of the road. So the UDC does require a minimum of 10% open space, and the applicant is providing 4.78 acres of qualified open space in accordance with UDC standards. You can see half of that is the landscape buffer along McMillan Road, the large central park here with the tot lot and some internal pathways, and then there's also more of a passive open space that links some of these blocks together to allow people to get to the park. And of course, with the addition of the micropath lot here that staff is recommending this evening. The applicant has provided you some sample elevations of what's expected to be constructed in that development. Again, in the R4 zone, there are minimum home sizes that you have to comply with. So a single-story home, there's a minimum 1,400 square foot minimum, and then a two-story home has to be a minimum of 1,600 square feet. So we'll note that on the building restriction form when they come in and subdivide their phases. We did receive written testimony on this particular application. We received written testimony from Richard Kepler, had some concerns about traffic. And then we also received applicant's response from Becky McKay, and I'll let her go over some of the items that she wants to address with you this evening. But I'll let her get through her testimony, let the public testify, and if there's any conditions you need me to go through and have modified, certainly happy to do that for you. Again, staff is recommending approval with the provisions of a development agreement. I'll conclude my presentation and stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff? Would the applicant like to come forward?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm Becky McKay with Engineering Solutions, business address 1029 North Rosario in Meridian. I'm representing the applicant on this project, who's Todd Amix, and the application says 4345 Linder Road LLC, but that's who it is, Todd Amix, and then Mr. Brinegar. This particular parcel, as Bill indicated, is just a little over 40 acres. It's surrounded by development. You have Paramount subdivision to the north, which is R8, Cobblefield to the west, which is R8, Cedar Springs to the east, which is LO and R8, and then Baldwin Park to the south, which is R8. As you can see from the aerial, this is an infill parcel that Central Services have been stubbed to the property. As Bill indicated, there are 4 local stub streets to this parcel. And when we went to design the property, obviously, you know, from our perspective, based on the number of trips that'll be generated, which is 1,208 vehicle trips per day at build-out, we believe that the development warrants its own access to McMillan Road. We did do a traffic study done by Thompson Engineers. They determined 60% of the traffic will go east, 40% of the traffic will go west, and we do need to mitigate and build a turn lane at our entrance due to the volume that we'll create. When I had the neighborhood meeting, we had, I think, 6 or 7 residents that attended. They seemed to like the density of the project, the size of the lots. Their primary concern was obviously traffic within their neighborhood. I made the comment to them that in our pre-application conference with the city of Meridian that staff would like us to not have our own independent access to McMillan, and they said, well, we definitely object to that. In my meetings with ACHD, based on the Fox Run Way, collector roadway into Paramount. That is 710 feet west of my approach. So as far as meeting the standards for a minor arterial and an access to it, I meet all ACHD standards. I meet all site visibility standards. And I do not have a competing approach that is directly across from us, which makes for a safer approach to the arterial. Now, in designing this, I wanted to make sure that, one, we didn't create a situation where we had cut-through traffic coming through us from the other subdivisions, nor were we putting cut-through traffic into their developments. So I tried to design it to basically balance that traffic out, and that was kind of the driving force of what's before you. As you can see, we have significant landscaping that is adjacent to McMillan Road. That's the Lemp Settlers Canal there. We have a 48-foot common lot there. As far as landscapable area up to top of bank is 35 feet. We will have a detached sidewalk on the south side, which is consistent with what they have done along that McMillan corridor, where you have the Settlers Canal traversing parallel with McMillan. We have our central open space right there off our island entrance. That is 2.44 acres. So it's a very large central open space. There's going to be a pond, playground area, picnic shelters, and we have pathways that go through it, linking the entire development. We have another pocket park that is located just south of that. That's approximately 0.64 acres, so a little over half an acre. We have pathways, grassy areas, and then we're going to have a yard shuffleboard facility there, so there'll be an amenity within that. As Bill indicated, there's 4.11 acres of open space, or what we consider eligible open space. So we do exceed the 10% required. And here's kind of a blow up of that central open space. As you can see, we have pathways that come through. There we go. So we have micropaths and pathways that come through and lead down to the play area, the picnic area, and come down, and then there's another pathway that goes to the south. On our pocket park here, we have pathways that come in from the west and will take people up and over to the central common area, and then a drop-down micropath here. As you can see, here are the stub streets that we propose. Ada County Highway District has asked us to do a stop control here at Bryce Canyon and Bird Drive, so this will be a four-way stop to slow traffic. Here, since we have a pedestrian pathway, we will do a raised pedestrian-friendly crossing, so the cars will have to slow down to go up and over. And then we talked to ACHD about doing another one on this roadway. This is the plat that's before you. When we designed this, our client, Mr. Amix, likes the larger lots. So even though we're designated medium density residential, we are asking for a step down. We did not ask for R8, we're asking for R4. Our density, our gross density is 3.15 dwelling units per acre. Our lots will range from 8,000, and I've got one that's clear up to 17,000 square feet. Our average lot size in the project is 9,168 square feet. So these are pretty good sized lots. They vary in width from 70 to 75. And then, of course, the corner lots are larger. They're like 85s and 90s. And then they're all 115 feet deep. This kind of gives you an idea of the type of homes that Mr. Amix and his building team build. They've built these throughout the valley in Alpine Point. We did Decatur Estates off of Linder for them. They're obviously very attractive since they have a group and team of builders. You get a good variety of architecture and a mix of materials and good modulation. This is one of the models that Mr. Amix has constructed that they put in the fall collection. Going through the conditions of approval, as Bill indicated, the staff had asked for some clarification on our plat, which we did clarify the Idaho Power easement, that 60-foot easement, because there is a transmission line that runs along the south side of McMillan. We also delineated the settlers' easement for the canal to make sure that obviously we can have an adequate area to construct our 5-foot sidewalk and landscaping. I was alarmed by the condition to under 1.1. Item A, second bullet point, it said the applicant shall replace the proposed road access to West McMillan Road with a pedestrian connection that meets the requirements of the UDC. I did not make that change because I do not feel that that is an appropriate modification. This project warrants the access. This will operate at a level of service C. If you go to Summit Way, which is in the Cedar Springs development, that, according to Ada County Highway District, that collector roadway is operating at a level of service D. So obviously, if we eliminate our access to McMillan, then that will send more trips through these other developments, which, in my opinion, is not good planning. And so we are objecting to bullet point number 2. Bill asked me to put a pedestrian pathway to Cobblefield to the west. I did do that. The only thing that we're objecting to is it says that we shall work with the Cobblefield Crossing HOA to connect the pathways. That is easier said than done. Some of the HOAs are very easy to work with and some are not. And so then what happens if we have a HOA that does not want to cooperate, then I end up having a condition that I can't satisfy because it says I shall. Now, I will be glad to make the attempt, but I just object to the word shall. I'll put the ped path there. I would love the residents to have interaction, pedestrian. They've got open space and walkways over here, but sometimes they get very persnickety about other residents using their private open space that they pay for. And so I ran across that before. Secondly, on item 1.1.3F, we were required to receive approval from Idaho Power and Settlers on our landscape improvements. It's premature at this process because neither agency will grant us approval till we give them construction plans and the final landscape design. I did have the landscape architect modify the landscape plan to incorporate staff's comments and restrict the type of trees that go along the McMillan corridor where we have the transmission lines to, I think, a type 1, Bill? Is that what we agreed upon? So I guess I would like item 1.1.3F removed because it's impossible to comply with that at this juncture. Other than that, we feel we've got a really great project. It's low density. The lots around me are 4,500, 4,000 square feet, 6,500 square feet, 7,400 square feet. Then there's some lots over here that are in the 7 and 9,000s. So as far as adding another kind of lot size to this area, that's what we'll be doing with that 9,000 square foot average. You know, providing a little bit of diversity, and I think based on the comprehensive plan, that's what it encourages, is that we provide diversity. And we've got the smaller lots, we've got the office component, and so staff has been supportive of the overall proposal. The neighbors liked the density, they liked the bigger lots, and I'll open up to questions.
I have just one question for you, Becky. Which, that second condition on, that you shall work with the HOA, what number was that?
1.1.1A bullet point 1.
Okay. And so then leaving the access to McMillan was what number?
1.1.1A bullet point 2.
2. Okay.
And then I did submit responses. They did come in today. I had 2 staff members out with the flu, so this week's been kind of crazy. So it does basically outline in my August 16th letter that I provided to staff the conditions that we're asking for changes. And the gravel condition up here on McMillan, because I just don't know if I'm going to have the room to do that based on the widening. We'll have to widen 17 feet from center line. And Settlers has lined that section of the Settlers Canal.
Any other questions for staff, or for the applicant?
Madam Chair. Becky, did you say the pedestrian path on the west side connects with some common area in Crossfield?
Cobblefield, yes.
Or Cobblefield, excuse me.
Yeah, if I...
what is that? Okay.
I'll show you right here.
Okay.
So they have basically some linear open space, and then they have, looks like a pathway that comes up. And so our micropath is right there.
Okay. Thank you.
But that is, like I said, private open space, so.
Any other questions for Commissioner Yearsley?
Madam Chair. Becky, so what is this open space on the upper right left-hand corner?
Right here?
Yes.
That is the low point of the property, and so that will be storm drainage.
Okay.
And as far as groundwater, the groundwater out in this area is at about 9 to 11 feet. So we anticipate we'll have like seepage beds, not ponds.
Okay.
That's what we want to install.
So on the bullet point 1.1A, so are about the, you shall coordinate, are you just wanting that condition removed altogether or just taking the shall out?
I guess I'd like to take the shall out. I'll be glad to contact them, but if they won't allow the fence to have a gap in it, then it's the micropath to nowhere.
Right.
And I had that happen at Isola Creek. We did a micropath because the staff wanted us to try to make interconnectivity to Bridge Tower, and we went to the Bridge Tower Homeowner Association, and they said, you can build your path, but we're not taking the fence down. So we built the path, spent the money, and it goes into a fence. So I guess I don't want that to happen again.
Okay. So if you couldn't get access to it, what you're asking for is that pathway to be removed.
Yes,
is what
sir.
I understand.
I mean, it would serve no purpose.
Right.
I'd rather just put the area back into the lots and spend the money on amenities than on a pathway to nowhere.
Okay. And you don't need that pathway for a block length or anything like that.
Yeah.
Is that
No,
correct?
sir. No.
Okay.
Because we have these 2 stub streets right here.
Okay.
And plus that's a perimeter there.
Right.
No, it was not put there for block length.
Okay. On the 1.1.13F, the receive approval for the landscaping plans, you want that one to be removed altogether, or do you want to just say at the time of construction, or, I mean, what are your, I'm just trying to make clarification to make sure,
On the 1.1.3A, we did restrict the class 1 trees along the transmission lines. We're fine with that.
Okay.
It was the second portion where grass or gravel on the north side of the limp will be installed, because that's their access. See,
Right.
Settlers accesses the Lemp Canal from McMillan.
Okay.
So that's why they haven't required that any of the developments build an access road on the south, and have allowed us with license agreements to grass right up to the top of Bank, which gives that a lot better, appeal when you drive down McMillan Road.
Okay.
So I can't do anything that Settlers won't allow me to do.
Right. No, I understand that. I was actually talking about 1.1.13F, the receive approval for the landscaping plan from the irrigation and the Idaho Power.
Yeah, it's not possible to do that at the preliminary plat stage.
Okay, at preliminary plat,
Correct,
okay.
correct.
'Cause my question is could we actually make that at final design or at construction or something and not at preliminary plat?
Yeah, at final plat,
Okay.
yeah. Like prior to final plat signature, obtain Settlers and Idaho Power approval for the landscape plan adjacent to their facilities.
Okay.
That would be totally acceptable.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody signed up for public testimony, Chris?
Madam Chair, we had one person sign in, Joni McMillan.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jody McMillan, 2672 West Tenuta Meridian. I'm here as a parent of 200 students, and most importantly, I'm the PTA president of Hunter Elementary. This new subdivision, I'm asking the board to deny. It's going to have 128 homes, which at least will have 50-something kids going into Hunter. Our school was built for 650 students. We are currently at 789. For an elementary school, that is not appropriate. It's not safe. We do not have the room for more students. There are already several subdivisions that are being built right now, have already been approved. That is going to bring more students to Hunter Elementary because no other school around us also has room. Paramount's at 550. They're about to get all the apartment buildings. Prospect is at 750 also, and they're having a CBH building right near them. It is time for the City of Meridian to stop planning for the future residents and start focusing on the ones that are here now. We are jeopardizing the future and the safety and education of our children by overcrowding them in schools that cannot possibly keep up with this growth. I ask for you to consider this, to pass it, put it on till future after the new school is built, and we can see then how many students we have. But right now, we have no more room at Hunter Elementary. Thank you.
I have one question for you. When is that school scheduled to be built?
We were told 2021, possibly.
Okay.
West Ada does currently own land near Settlers Park. It was supposed to be an elementary school that all of those subs would funnel into, Baldwin Park, Cedar Springs, this subdivision. That would be perfect. Okay. That would alleviate everything, but there's no plan to build here right now.
Thank you. Was that all that signed in?
That was all signed in.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to testify on this application? Okay. Would the applicant like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission, Becky McKay. I've always worked closely with the Meridian School District or West Ada School District. I've had a lot of middle schools, elementaries, high schools in my projects throughout my 28 years. Hunter Elementary, that's the one in Bridge Tower. That was part of, I did the Bridge Tower development. Obviously, we are straining the schools system. I've met with Joe Yoakum. We've been, he's been active trying to plan for more sites. I know they're planning, they just passed their bond for the new Owyhee High School that's coming through as an annexation. I'm doing an elementary north of Eagle. So, you know, the private sector, we're trying to have those private-public partnerships to make sites available to the school district. Some of them are at cost, some of them are full donations. The North Meridian area has really, you know, grown rapidly, and they do need some new schools out here. But we just can't shut growth off and say until you build a new school, you know, They basically have indicated in their response, you know, they can't guarantee that the kids in this development will be able to attend the schools that are nearest them, because they're obviously juggling some of these schools. Now, what Joe's told me is they're going to start building some smaller schools, but more numerous, that some of the elementaries are too large, and there's kind of, I guess, a happy medium as far as the number of students. But I'm doing everything I can to help the district. I just want to let you know that. Thank you.
And Becky, how long till this is all built out?
This is a three-phased project. Mr. Amix will do phase 1 next year, and then probably phase 2 would be in 2020. And obviously, depending on the market, phase 3 may be in 2020 or it may be 2021. If things slow, interest rates go up, or the economy starts to falter a little bit, obviously, you know, it's based on demand. I think Decatur Estates, I think it was of similar size and number of lots, and I think we did it in 3 years. Maybe a little bit less.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley.
So did the school district actually, so they submitted, I'm assuming, the standard letter, but they didn't say that we can't handle the growth, or we don't want the, you know, they didn't come actually out and say anything against this project, correct?
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Yearsley, no. They just say new residents cannot be assured of attending the neighborhood school, as it may be necessary to bus students to available classrooms across the district.
Okay.
And that they encourage us to provide safe walkways, bike paths. But nowhere in this letter does it basically state that this should be denied. And staff has us constructing all the sidewalk and landscaping adjacent to McMillan, and we showed it in our first phase. So we will make that connection to get that safe route to schools.
Okay.
Thank you.
With first phase.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you. So at this time, can I get a motion to close the public hearing on H-2018-0074 White Cliff Estates subdivision?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing on H-2018-0074. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. I'll just start off by yay, R4.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think they've done a good job of working with staff on getting some of the issues addressed. And I guess I'll just start off with the one I know we don't really have the final say on, but I think the access to McMillan Road, I like it staying. I mean, I think as long as ACHD has recommended it's safe and they're doing the turn lanes, I think the more we can alleviate some of that stacking and driving through the other subdivisions, and I think that's great. And I think I agree that changing the wording on making it mandatory that she make that happen with the micropath. I think if they're open to it, great. If not, there's no, I don't think we can hold her or that developer accountable to what another subdivision may or may not say.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Perot.
I agree. I'm very happy to see an R4 development come in. And I am also in agreement with the access from McMillan. I think it's you know, when you have the R8 subs, they're just dense enough that you tend to have a lot of cars parked on the street itself. And then that creates an additional, you know, issues with safety. If you have a car parked on each side of the street and then you have, you know, 128 cars from 128 homes filtering through all those, I think the McMillan access is necessary. And I really like this large park area. That size, I think, is fantastic. It's nice to see something that substantial.
Yeah, I agree, instead of a bunch of little ones.
Right.
Yep.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Holland.
I tend to agree, I think, with both of your comments, and I can see where staff's concern would be having several access points off of McMillan, but I would agree, I think it makes more sense to keep it there, to keep traffic moving throughout those neighborhoods safely. I also appreciate that they've done what was requested in putting some stop measures on one of those corners and making it a little bit safer for some of the pedestrians walking out of the parks. But I think it's a very well thought out project, and it's nice to see some R4 density.
Madam Chair, I agree. And I do. I think the excess is acceptable. I understand what staff is looking for, but given that McMillan's going to be 3 lanes, I don't think it's bad, and they've got enough room on both sides to have that access. I also agree that on the pathway that having her, shall do that. I think she should make every effort to try to make that connection, but if the adjoining property doesn't want it, have them submit a letter to her that we don't want that pathway as a proof that she did every effort type situation. I think, as we talked, at the approval of landscaping from the irrigation and power company at the final plat, I think is acceptable. Yeah. And everything. The one lady that had talked about the schools, that's always a tough one because schools are overcrowded. However, if you talk to the school district, they don't actually build a new school until they have enough students to fill a school. So you have a little bit of overcrowding until you have enough to fill another school, and then they work to build another school. So you kind of have a cart before the horse, or a horse before the cart situation. And at what point do we as a city draw the line and say no more? Was it this application, the next one, or the previous one that we should have? That's always a hard decision to make. And so I think it's a good infill project. I agree that the R4 is exciting, that we actually see some bigger lots again. I'm in favor of this application.
Yeah, I agree. And on the schools, and that's why I was curious, the school is scheduled for 2021, and this is not even scheduled to be built out until approximately then. So I think it should, I don't think this is the one that tips the bucket. I would be in favor of it with the modifications that we discussed. Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion? They're all staring at you, Commissioner Yearsley.
Maybe we can, Madam Chair. Bill, can you potentially pull that staff report up for 1.1.1A? Might help.
So I guess the question I have with the maintain access, that's not under our purview, that's City Council purview, but we can make a recommendation, correct?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, yes, that is correct. You can recommend striking that condition.
Okay.
But I have the list of Becky's revisions to the condition, so I'm happy to go over that if you'd like.
Actually, that would be great.
Yes.
Because I think I might be missing one.
Yeah, we got it. It's in your packet, but it's just easier for me to kind of jog down what I heard and let you know how I think we could change it if you want me to go over them real quickly. So item 1.1.1A bullet 1 is the micropath connection to the west. So if you want some flexibility in there, you can say I think from what I've heard from the discussion tonight, it's your desire if they can't obtain the subdivision's approval, then you don't want the pathway at all. It's not even required there because it's going nowhere.
Yeah.
So I think that's your desire in your motion, that provided, do you want her to work with the HOA prior to city council hearing and get that answer so that council can take the appropriate actions? Or do you want to give them the latitude, because that's their phase 3, if I remember correctly. And so do you want to give them that latitude all the way to phase 3, 5 years to figure it out? It's up to your purview tonight, but I think I'm on board with where the commission's going, I believe, is if you can't get the approval, then not even to get it. Don't even have a pathway to nowhere, because I'm telling you, Isla Creek is burned in my memory for a long time, and that's not the intent. The intent is to have this pathway connect, and that's why we wrote the condition so strongly, is because we see the value, as planners, we see value. All of us see value in connecting open space with other subdivisions.
Right.
Whether or not we can make that all come together is the challenge for us.
I would say let's get it done sooner than later. So, I mean, you're going to have a fence there and construction can be done and make the gate or open the fence at the time where you're doing construction, not right up to the end of.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I think if Becky could reach out, she has a month before you get to City Council, at least get something in writing from the HOA that say, yeah, we'll entertain it, or we're supportive of it. At least council knows that there's a possibility it could happen, and make that happen, and give at least the applicant assurances that they have some surety that this is going to happen, some certainty, I guess. That makes a lot of sense in my mind. The other bullet point was 1.1.1A bullet 2. You want to strike that because you want the access road to stay.
Yep.
As shown by the applicant. 1.1.3A talks about the grass and gravel. I think we have that worked out. I think we should just strike that provision as the applicant has suggested. Just leave the note, provide the class 1 trees. Strike out the provision for grass or gravel on the north side of Limb Canal, because I don't think there's going to be any room for it by the time the irrigation gets in there, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And code allows, and they're going to still have the 25-foot buffer on the opposite side of the canal, so we're good shape there.
So that one was 1.1.
1.1.3. Yeah, 3A.
A.
3A.
Yeah, 3A.
And D is almost the same situation. Just gives them, I would just strike D, 1.1.3D. F is the requirement that they obtain approval. We're just modifying that one to say with the final plat or prior to signature on the final plat, they have those approvals secured.
Right.
And then as I looked to her response and looked at the staff report before the meeting, I did note that there was an error with condition 1.2.1. Staff inadvertently left an R8, comply with the R8 dimensional standards, and as you know, this is an R4, so we want to get that cleaned up as well for the applicant. And that's all that I've captured for you as far as modifications.
Okay, I think I can do that one. All right, thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to City Council of file number H 2018-0074 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of August 16, 2018 with the following modifications. That section 1.1.1A bullet point 1 be modified to have that the applicant, how do I want to word that? The applicant needs to work with the, or to work with the HOA or at least have discussions with the HOA to see if they're amenable to having a connection, a pathway connection prior to City Council, I think is what we talked. Okay. Item 1.1.1A bullet point 2 be removed. Item 1.1.3A and D be removed, and 1.1.1 or 1.13 F be modified that the that she shall receive approval from the Irrigation District and Idaho Power up at final plat. And then I think it was 1.2.1 to have it be changed from an R8 to an R4 designation.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to recommend approval of H-2018-0074 with modifications. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Chair?
Oh, yes,
I have a couple items for you.
Mr. Parsons.
A couple things for you to take under consideration before we leave this evening. So the first is, the applicant is here in the audience. He was here he showed up for his Verasso we called it number 4, but Verasso Village number 4. I know you guys have continued that to September 6th. I didn't see where anyone was signed up and wishing to testify on that item this evening. So if it's your desire to reopen that up this evening to answer your questions, ask your questions to the applicant, and you feel comfortable with doing that and taking action on that application tonight, we can certainly do that. If not, we can stay with the original motion and have him come back on the 6th, and you can ask your questions then.
I guess my question would be, Sonia has left, and it's her she's the one that's been working on this application. Would it be, do you feel comfortable in all the details of this application, or do we?
Staff report was fairly clean. The applicant's in agreement with the conditions of approval. I'm not sure if you had any desires. I'm not sure what your questions are, but I'm certainly comfortable, if you are, to assist in getting this closure. I know Sonia and I talked about it before she left, and she wanted to get it wrapped up tonight.
Okay.
The way we can do that, certainly happy to oblige her.
And Madam Chair, my guess would be kind of leaning on legal. This could open a potential for a challenge if that's not correct.
That my main concern is that someone may have been here, may not have signed up, but left once you continued it.
Yeah.
And that could open.
I know there was people coming and going, and I wasn't paying attention to who's,
right,
if somebody did get up and leave right at that moment, so.
So just for legal purposes, we could go through this process, it could go through city council, get approved, and be challenged and have to go through the entire process again.
Correct, on
Not
the
understanding.
technicalities.
And my guess is the applicant wishing to take that chance, I guess, if we want to bring him up to talk to him, because ultimately, I'm okay to move forward with it, but it's his liability if someone does challenge, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I will leave that to the chair to decide how she would like to proceed.
Yeah, would the applicant please come forward? Have you been listening to our discussion there? Are you willing to take that risk?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
State your name and address.
Chad Olson, 12790 West Telemark Street, Boise, Idaho, 83713.
Okay. All right.
It was my understanding that the commission was the final say tonight because this does not go to council. And I don't know if that would affect your decision. In all the meetings we've had for the Verasso project, I think the very first one, we had 2 people come to our neighborhood meeting. On 2, none came. On 3, none came. And on 4, none came.
Okay.
So it's been a pretty good project, and I'm willing to take the risk. I think there'd be an appeal period no matter what we do at the end of the 10, at the end of 10 days. So I'm willing to take the chance.
Okay, I would say if the applicant is willing to take the chance, I think our next meeting is looking fairly full already anyway by this draft. It already has, I believe, 5 items on it.
Yeah. I would be amenable to move forward
Yeah.
with it if he's willing to take that risk.
Yeah, if the risk is up to you, and then we'll, yeah, I was just thinking there would be another shot at city council, but you're right.
But no, this is an approval.
This is it, this is CUP. Yeah, I think with hearing what the neighborhood response has been, let's go ahead and move forward.
So at that point, we need to make a motion to reopen.
Yes.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move that
Commissioner
we reopen file number H 2017-0071 to the hearing date of August 16th and allow the applicant to present his case.
Okay.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to reopen H-2018-0071. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. We were at the point where we were asking the applicant to give his presentation.
Chad Olson.
Okay.
12790 West Telemark Street, Boise, Idaho, 83713. Sorry for being late. For some reason, I get mixed up on the commission times versus the council times. But anyway, this is the fourth project, fourth phase of the Verasso project located on Records and just down from the village there. And it's been a very successful project for us. This is a component of 2-bedroom units and some 1-bedroom units. We currently have 3-bedroom units out there, and they are built in a configuration of townhomes. And what we're finding is on this last piece that the demand has been to incorporate some smaller units in our development so that we have a nice mixture of all kinds of units, meaning 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 1 bedroom. So this is an attempt to basically fulfill what market is asking us to do. It's a little bit smaller of a site. So we've struggled a teeny bit trying to get something that really looked like our current project and fit in on a harmonious, fluid type look. And so what you see before you on this picture with the cars parked underneath was our attempt to do that and keep that architecture in kind of a contemporary fashion. We get a lot of compliments on our project about how it looks, and we've really strived to maintain a very good look out there in that area of the development of the city. We are asking for 64 units. The application, I noticed, said 68, and we were struggling with some open common space area considerations, and so we ended up sizing it down to 64 units so that we could maintain the open space. We have a couple of ideas on even how to create even more open space. And so what you see before you is an application for 64 units with a mixture of 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom, most of them being 2-bedroom. And I stand ready to answer any questions you might have.
I've got a question. You said you wanted, was this the one, you said we wanted flexibility to be 3 or 4 stories?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and what height would you be at 4 stories then?
At 4 stories, it would be about 50, and that zone allows for 65.
Okay, and what does that get you? You're still wanting to stay at the 64, just more open space inside the atrium area?
Yeah, inside the atrium area, or we've even thought about breaking that huge building up into 2 buildings and having more common space in between, creating a courtyard like we have on our other projects. That seems to have been a really, when we first did that, there wasn't anything like that we'd ever seen here in this valley, period, not Meridian, but anywhere. And that has really been just a kind of a unique marker to our development where people just really, they really spend a lot of time in that open space. And so one of the ideas was, instead of having such a large building, is to possibly have 2. And then by doing 2, we might have to go to that next story up, kind of like the Regency did. And then that would provide us more open space. It's a big consideration for us. And what we're noticing is in the marketplace that a lot of the people that reside, our residents, use that open space quite a bit.
Yeah, I would imagine it's an interesting space, just kind of private and cut off. So, Commissioner Pro.
Madam Chair, so then along those lines, what are there any buildings in that vicinity that are at that height, or is this going to be the tallest?
I would say that the buildings that are closest in that height are the Regency.
Okay.
And that's split by our other project,
Mhm.
Verasso 1, 2, and 3. I know that on the other side of Verasso, Phase 1, there is an open field. And that open field was approved for apartments as well, and
Mhm.
I know they're tall. So I don't feel like it'll be, out of place.
Okay.
You also have the shopping mall, which the former Rosauers, and that's pretty tall too. So I don't think it will look out of place.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Casanelli.
if you go 4 stories, are you planning on keeping the unit count the same?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you're okay.
Yeah, we're not going to change the density. One of the things that I haven't brought up yet is the parking. And, we're not actually just the builders. We build it and we own it. And parking is a big consideration. And in this particular diagram that you see before you, we have 30 extra car spaces. And there's just can never be enough parking.
Mhm.
It just seems that there can never be enough. And so we just constantly, we deal with the problems that we create. So if we create solutions up front, then what happens is we get to deal with it down the road, and it's much easier for us as we manage these units. Verasso's 1, 2, and 3 have 4 spaces per unit. They have 2 in the garage and then 2 outside. And so we just don't have the problems.
Mm.
So we really were cognizant of trying to put a little extra parking in so that the people could. So by nature of that, going up in units would then decrease that extra parking space. So we would not be going up in units. The density would be at 64.
And do those extra units, that includes your compact spaces? You have plenty of regular size spaces.
We do. That configuration you see is a one-way, and that was an 18-foot lane. But that's a one-way, and you can really get by on like 15. So technically, none of them needed to be compact. That was just the surveyor thought that the minute that we went under 20, that the spaces needed to be compact. So we actually went back through, relabeled that, and changed that lane to 17. And then none of them became compact anymore. There's a couple, but not a lot.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Pro.
So if you were to consider doing the 2 buildings and going 4 stories, so is that going to change the number of parking spaces?
It might increase it, is what we're thinking. And so when you're covering so much building, so much land with that much building, it just doesn't provide for, the nice little courtyards, and it doesn't allow us to use the space as efficiently. So I think that either the 1 building configuration or the 2 building configuration, we will be able to keep the extra parking that we have now and either make the decision to create more open space or more parking, but probably more open space. I feel like we have enough parking. 30 extra spots is quite enough. But again, we don't want to burden our neighbors. We don't want them to all park at Culver's and then have them call us and get upset with us or something, or Les Schwab or something. And so, we feel like we want to create the solution up front for our own problems and make it appropriate.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
One follow-up question. If you were to do the 2 buildings, would that reduce the number of covered parking spaces?
Yeah, that would, because it would then be back to trying to put both buildings under, but maybe not. Maybe we could just do 2. It would depend on the configuration of the 32. But either way, we would have some covered because that's the ordinance, and people would want them covered.
Madam Chair, what currently you're at the 3-story configuration? What is your height?
Currently at the 3-story configuration, we are at 40 feet.
40 feet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're saying you'd be at 50 feet at 4-story?
Yeah, that's correct. Currently, right now, that very top floor is a vaulted ceiling, so it's really tall. We just wouldn't have as much vault on the very top. If you go back to, can I do that from here? You can see on the very top of those roofs that that's kind of a flared roof, and so that it was a lot more vaulted up there. That just wouldn't be as vaulted that way. It would be down a little bit. Also, the parking garage itself was a little bit taller underneath. If the parking went outside, it could be made smaller as well.
Okay.
Shorter in that distance. But again, that zone allows for 65 feet, but I don't think we'd even be close to that.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Yearsley.
You don't have a rendering of what that 4-story would look like?
I don't have the rendering with me, but it would look very similar to the one rendering that you see there. It just would be a little more flatter on the top of the roof. But, you know, in consideration of the design of the Verasso projects, we've really tried to maintain that to look really good. There would be no way at this point that we would do something to jeopardize what we've already built out there. That's number one. Number two, there is the certificate of zoning compliance that I feel is kind of rigorous, and I'm kind of glad for that because it really pushed us at the very beginning of the project, and we're kind of glad for it now.
Okay. As a follow-up, and I'll just state it out right now, I actually been intrigued with the 4-story idea. However, without actually seeing a concept, I'm not comfortable recommending approval of a concept, and so allowing him to talk, I would be willing to continue it to have him come back with a 4-story if he would be interested. But I guess for me personally, and I'll let others weigh in as well, but I'm not comfortable, especially given the semi-residential to the east a little bit, of going that high without at least some purview for myself. So, so just so you know.
I would tend to agree. That's why I started with that question in the beginning, is I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around what that would look like. And unfortunately, I'm one of those people that's got to see it. And especially since this is the CUP and this is the only shot we have at it.
Absolutely.
If you're considering, I mean, I would be willing to approve the rendering you're showing us, but if you're considering 4-story or 2 buildings or something, I think we'd like to see that.
Yeah.
So
and that
I guess
would be totally fine. Yeah.
That's your choice at this point. Do we approve what's in front of us and then you're strapped to building? I mean, what's your timeline on this?
Oh, you know, in the next few months, we're
Okay.
fine. If it meant coming back and taking a little bit more time, that's totally fine with us. We're not in a rush to go to market quickly. We have our hands full. We're building quite briskly now and should be done in the next 6 to 7 weeks. So we're fine.
And just so you know, I mean, I think this is beautiful, and I think it's a very interesting concept, and I think that courtyard, especially in such a busy area like that, having an enclosed private space instead of open private space to all the noise and the traffic and everything, I think that's a really unique, really great idea. So I'm happy with this, and I'd be excited if you are thinking about changing it. I think we'd like to see it. So that's your choice at this point.
Totally acceptable.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Pro.
So if you were to, I'm not a fan of the length. I'm not a fan of the long building. I really like the idea of the 2 buildings, but also taking into consideration the 4 stories that brings along with it. But so then, if that's the case, would the open space or the courtyard then be open to the street, or is it still going to be private and enclosed?
It would be. A lot of times on a project like this, we call this a podium deck, one side is left open. And that's for sun, actually, and that way you can grow things. Not that you can't grow things in a completely closed courtyard, but in this particular case, we would arrange the buildings so that they were in a courtyard-like fashion, keeping with the same kind of spirit that we've already created. And so it would be open, but as far as sound goes, that's a consideration because I built phase 1 when records didn't go through, and now it goes through, and it's a lot more noisy. And so, so that being said, I think we could create a courtyard with 2 buildings, and I think we could create a sound barrier with landscaping. And so I think we can get the best of both worlds with 2 buildings and get a little more open space. It's also harder to create a courtyard on top of a parking garage. And so we'd have a little bit more flexibility in working with the ground as opposed to working on top of a cement slab. Not that we couldn't do it, but it's just that I think it would be easier. So I have no issue going back and maybe generating a site plan that shows both. We were a little taken off guard because the city code for building next to the property line or 5 feet away is fine. We actually came to this commission and got an approval for that. But the building code changes that, and that was kind of like last minute. And so then we were kind of stressing out and going quite quickly to try to figure this out and keep the open space requirement. But we have settled on 64, and we can either look at that as doing one single building or two, and I am more than happy to bring it back before the commission so that you guys can see it, and because we want a great project.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Castanelli.
Is it, I'm just throwing this out there, is it possible to do, if you do split it up and do two buildings, I'm assuming it's running lengthwise from records from the east to west is the length of that building, correct? So it's running, you're getting, it's going, if you're standing at records, it's going back towards the co-op. Or I mean, towards former Rosairs there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the long tangent.
Yeah. Is it, if you split it up into two buildings, is it possible to do one building at 3 stories, closer to records, the second building at 4 stories? Is that a possibility to still get the unit count and do some of the things you want to do?
We could have 2 unique buildings by doing that, but each building would create its own set of circumstances with architects. It'd be easier to do two of the same type of buildings and almost make them like towers so that each one looked the same. But back to your question about the long-running tangent, we would have the ability to split it up and actually use the building to block a little bit of the sound if we put it, if we put the courtyard, I'm just trying to think what's the best way to put this, parallel, if we put the buildings parallel to the Rosars building, so that each building was parallel with some open spaces for parking, and then we basically blocked that sound and created the courtyard with the 2 buildings, just kind of like we've done everywhere else. So without a site plan, it's probably difficult to see that. I've looked at it a couple times, so it's easier for me. But yeah, 2 different buildings might be a little more difficult.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes, my question is, do you have these renderings available? Is this a short turnaround? Do you want to come back?
Yeah, we could come back on, I think, September 6th. If that seems full and you wanted to bump us, we could bump to the next meeting. We're fine.
Madam Chair, members of the commission.
Yes, Bill.
Both the first hearing in September, it has 5 projects on it. I wouldn't say it's full, but one application could take a while. Okay. And the other one's filled up as well. So both of those are filled. I would almost go on the 6th or the next one in October, but I'll leave it up to you. If it's just to look at elevations, I don't think, and we don't really have anyone here to testify on it, I don't think we're going to take a lot of deliberation on looking at some new renderings, so I think we could probably get through it fairly quick on the 6th, would be my opinion, if that gives the applicant enough time to pull his information together, because typically we like to have something 10 days prior to the public hearing so that we can get you want staff's take on the elevations and changes too. So maybe the 20th, or maybe the first hearing in October may be the best option at this point.
Okay. And
either way, I don't.
You're saying the 20th is pretty full.
I think we may want to go to the 20th so we can get Sonia those revised plans so she can at least let you know how that impacts the open space, if there's 2 structures and the parking and all of those things. We don't want to.
Well, I guess I'm asking, are you more comfortable with moving it to the October date, October 4th?
I think we're going to be filling up this winter, so
okay.
Things are coming in and we're pushing things to the 4th already, so I can tell you it's stacking up, and so no time's a good time. But to me, I don't want to leave the applicant hanging out there too long, but at the same time, I want us staff to have enough time to review it and get our take on their changes so that you can make the right decision.
I'd be okay with October. That gives us a little more time to look at everything and just make sure everything is perfect.
October 4th, then.
4th?
Yep.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Perot.
I move to continue file number H 2017-0071 to the hearing date of October 4th for the purpose of reviewing some additional renderings.
Second.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to continue H-2018-0071 to October 4th. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Anything? Wait a minute. I know.
Good. Everyone's getting antsy up there. Madam Chair, members of the commission. I did have one last item. As I mentioned to you, I had a couple things to share with you this evening, and one of them. So thank you, Chad. Appreciate you working with us and sticking around. So just more, some information for you. So over the last couple months, staff has been working on a revised staff report, a template. And what we've gone through the directors, we've gone to city council, we're fine-tuning that document as we sit here and as the days move along. But at some point, either the next hearing or the following hearing, I want to prepare a memo for you and share that document with you and try to get your take on it and your review of it as well. But it will be a drastic change from what you see now and read now. There will be a community metrics section of it. There will be a project summary table at the beginning of the report that gives you the high-level items of what the request is, how many lots, the density, the level of service for the roads. You'll have all of that in a table format. Did ACHD provide comments, yes or no? Are they going to planning? Are they going to their commission because the applicant can reach an agreement with ACHD? And then there will be a community metrics section that will say, how does this comply with the city's master plan for water and sewer? Are schools overcrowded? Yes or no? Are there pathways? Yes or no? I mean, there's going to be a lot more information in there to help you make a better informed decision on applications. We'll get that to you earlier in the report than later in the report. So again, I'm excited about what's kind of transpiring, but I just at least wanted to put that on your radar to keep your eyes open for that. It is going to be something new and approved. And again, we've coordinated with fire, police, school district. We reached out a wide net to get the right comments, I think, for you guys and the council as you deliberate on these land use applications. We're trying to give you the right information to make sure we're capturing everything. Because as you know, we're having more and more residents coming to these hearings and complaining about schools, the roads, density. So having that at your fingertips, readily available, I think it's going to be a great tool and resource for you. So on that note, I'll go to the next item that I wanted to share with you. And as part of your service to the City of Meridian, the Planning Division actually pays for your membership to the American Planning Association. As part of that membership, you have access to their website. And this is their web, and I pulled it up here just in case many of you may not know, or maybe you know you do or you don't. But at least I wanted to provide this as a resource to you as you sit up there and deliberate on land use applications. This particular site has a lot of things on policies, on training, on best practices for our planning profession. It's certainly, I'm a certified planner, so I spend quite a bit of time looking at this site and trying to find ideas and continuing my education and learning the latest trends on planning. So I didn't know if some of you were aware that you were members of this or not, but I guess my question for you tonight is I wanted to share this with you, and if you see this being valued, the city will continue to pay for that annual membership. If it's something that you guys don't think you would use and you haven't taken advantage of this resource yet, then I would just ask that at least give me some feedback as to whether or not you want us to continue paying for that, you see value in it, and that way I can at least pass it along to Caleb and our director to see what they want to go moving forward. But again, I just wanted to let you know there is a resource here. We pay for the membership. I'm just asking you to follow up with me as to whether or not you see value in it, or if you have been using this, or if you even knew about it. So I'll close with that remark and stand for any questions you may have, at least regarding this website, or maybe if you want to let me know if any of you have looked at this site or were even aware of it, so I can kind of gauge that as part of my conversation to Caleb sometime next week.
Madam Chair? What is our, how do we log on? What's the username and password?
Yeah.
What is the actual website? Is
The
it?
American Planning Association is how I get to it. I get a log on from the city, so I'm not sure how all that works, and that's why I said I would have to do more research on that. Again, Caleb had mentioned to me that to bring it up and see if you guys knew about it and were taking advantage of this. So I don't know if you guys have your own membership numbers or how all that works, but I can certainly follow up with him and get more
I
information
know,
for you.
I have not been given one. I don't know if you, no. Okay, so we've
You guys
obviously
get
not been
magazines in your
using
mail?
it.
Do you get magazines in your mailbox from the city?
Sometimes they bring them by here, I mean, I think it's a couple of times a year. They bring one by, but it's not been consistent.
Typically on that, I wish I had one here, but I thought they put your member number right on your
Okay.
mailing label on it. So if
Okay.
you haven't noticed it, you might want to look.
And I say it hasn't been consistent, but I don't know how often they come, so maybe it is consistent.
It's on a regular basis, so you should be getting it.
Is it
I don't know if it's a
monthly or quarterly or?
It seems like it's monthly. I have
Okay.
a whole bunch of magazines in my.
I would say obviously at this point, we didn't realize we had this available to us at the website level. Is this something that's coming up for renewal next week or at the end of the year?
Well, it's something that we budget every year, so I would imagine it's part of our budget cycle already. And certainly, if you want to get back to me, maybe find a magazine and see if there is a login number, and I can try to get some more information from Caleb. And maybe next meeting we can discuss it, and you guys can let me know what you think. And I'll share that with Caleb.
Okay,
That's good.
Works. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Perot, go quick.
Oh, I make a motion to close the public hearing for August
Close public.
16th, 2018.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for August 16th. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries before Bill has another chance.